Genesis chapter 22, starting at verse 7. You may remain seated. Genesis chapter 22, verse 7. And it says, and Isaac spake unto Abraham his father and said, My father. And he said, Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for the burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And they came to a place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his knife, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called upon him out of the heavens, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thickets by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the name of the place Jehovah Jireh. As it is said to this day, it is the mount of the Lord, it shall be seen. I speak to you this morning from those very words, and to say Jehovah Jireh. God will provide. God will provide. 2017 has been quite a peculiar and interesting year. All the way in our personal lives and in some of the losses that we've seen and suffered in the last year and a half. People are transitioning to different aspects of our individual lives. A political year in which we've seen all manner of strange and different circumstances happening to us as a nation and around us in the world in which we live in. But we should not put our trust, amen, in our circumstances. We should not put our trust in our government. We cannot put our trust in our president.
All right.
Even our jobs, our retirement is not where we should put our trust. But our trust, our hope, and our faith lies in the fact that God is still God.
All right.
And God is still able to do what only God can do. And just as he has taken care of us over the years and taken care of this world over the centuries, it is still in his hands that we put our trust. Even this country and nation that we live in had enough sense to embark and print upon the most possession we have, which we call our money. They printed these words, "In God we trust." And so I want to remind you that in spite of what happened, what has happened over these last 12 months and over your life, God is still in control. Bear with me just a few minutes, just to drive home that point a couple of ways, and we will let you go. But do you recall as a child? Thank you. Give you a little time to travel back. Or do you even recall with your children? At the beginning of school year, your school year, there is a list of supplies that they request for you to have and to have in place when you arrive at school. And if you can recall, whether you had very little, whether you had access to a lot, but those days leading up to school, perhaps you would go shopping with your parents to pick up your school supply.
All right.
I need you to be the child right now because as a child, amen, this was an opportunity for you to get a whole lot of new stuff that you could take to school on the first day.
That's it.
You could have all of your supplies, so as you are with your parents, you would go from row to row, from aisle to aisle, looking for the things on your list. And you would grab them and you would take them and put them in the bag because you say, I know I need this for school. Now, how often as a child did you take time out to evaluate the cost of that item?
It matters.
No, that was not significant to you as a child. You were not concerned about the cost. All you know is this is what was on the list.
All right.
And this is what you need.
Yes, sir.
And your parents would either accept it or they would reject it based off of their additional evaluation. But even after you got the items that were on your list, I've got a feeling there were a couple of other items that you felt you really needed. And you began to argue your case about the reason why you needed that other item.
Yes, sir.
And perhaps your parents, your mother, your father looked at the list, the required material, the items that you needed, and they evaluated what was placed into the cart, amen, and they would say, well, that's not what you need. That's just what you want. And that's not being mean, that's not being difficult, that's not being ugly, that's operating within the resources that they had because they had to evaluate what they had to work with. And they also had to separate your needs from your wants. I want to let you know that just as mom and daddy looked over your list, and just as others have, and perhaps you looked over your children's list, God looks over his list every day. And he evaluates his list according to our needs. But oftentimes we go to God with our wants. And sometimes God don't always give us what we want, but I guarantee you he'll give you everything. I'm almost through now.
All right.
He'll give you what you need. Why I say that? Because he is Jehovah Jireh. He is my provider.
All right.
And I can't argue the fact that the God had done an excellent job. He has not fallen short on providing me with my needs. And he provides me with my needs based off of his riches in glory, he says. Jehovah Jireh. And so when you look at the names of God, the name that is given to God, the titles and all of the different aspects of what he is, who he is, and we deal simply with the simple name of Jehovah. You have to understand, just dealing with the word Jehovah, Jehovah simply means I am. When God called unto Moses and told him to go down to Pharaoh's house and tell Pharaoh to let my people go, and when he got there, and if he were to get there, and Moses says, who is it that I shall say sent me? Who is it that I shall say cause me to come here and to tell the mighty Pharaoh that I'm here to tell him to let your people go? God says, tell him that I am that I am. In other words, I am any and everything you need me to be. If you need a doctor, guess what? I am a doctor. If you need a lawyer, guess what? I am a lawyer. If you're hungry and need bread, guess what? He said, I am your bread. If you're sick, amen, he said, I am a healer. Amen. If you need delivering, guess what? He says, I am salvation. I am your deliverer. I am everything that you need. When you call on the name of Jehovah, you simply said, I am.
All right.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir, Reverend.
I have spoken unto you. I am. And when you talk of I am, when you talk of Jehovah, when you talk of God, you're not talking about something that he created. You're not talking about something that he formed. When you talk about I am, when you talk about Jehovah, he existed before anything else was ever made.
All right.
He has always been. He is not in the process of being made or created. He has already been. And he is everything.
Yes, sir.
You see, my mind doesn't understand every aspect of it. My mind cannot grasp how awesome and how powerful God is. And he even understood and he realized that because what I need may not be what you need. Amen. You going shopping. Amen. Everybody does not need, amen, an elementary pad. Amen. Everybody does not need wide margins. Amen. On the paper. It depends on where you are in life. You may be able to advance up and get the narrow margins. You get your ink pen instead of a jumbo pencil. Hello?
All right.
God said, I am whatever you need me to be, whatever level in life. So I can't speak for you, and you don't need to speak for me, but you ought to know what God is to you. Whatever it is, he is not limited in his abilities. And so Abraham says, that I shall call of this place Jehovah Jireh. In other words, I am Jireh, which simply means I am will provide whatever you need. I will provide.
Yes, sir.
And the story that I read to you speaks of Abraham, the father, and his son Isaac. And they're on their way a sacrifice because God has commanded, God has requested of them to go to a specific place
Yes, sir.
and offer up a sacrifice. And as Abraham, his son, and his servants are now on their way to this specific place to offer up this specific sacrifice, Abraham says unto his servants, you wait here a little while. Me and my son will go on further. And they took all the provisions that they needed in order to have the sacrifice that God had required. But his son Isaac said, well, Daddy, amen, Daddy, Hold on before we go too far.
All right.
Isaac said, son, here I am. And he said, we forgot something. He said, no, son, we didn't forget anything. He said, well, Daddy, I see the wood. I see the fire. I see everything that we normally use for a sacrifice. But we're missing. We're missing the actual sacrifice.
Yes, sir.
And Abraham looks at his son and says, God will. Look at that. God will provide.
All right.
You know the story. You know the outcome of the story. So this is no surprise to you. This is nothing that's going to alarm you or catch you off guard because you know how this story ends. But I need to back you up to the point where Abraham looks at his son and said, God will provide. Hold on, I need to give you one more word in this right here.
Wait a minute.
Verse 8 says, and Abraham said, my son, God will provide himself a lamb for the burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And they came to the place in which God had told him of. And Abraham built an altar. And there laid the wood. So Abraham is a faithful man, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
That Abraham is somebody we ought to aspire to look up to. I got a problem, though.
What you see that?
I see where Abraham understood the plan. But I'm trying to figure out how Isaac. Because the next verse says that the same verse says, and Abraham bound Isaac. Come on, Daddy, hold on.
Yeah.
Abraham bound Isaac, and now Isaac. First of all, we're dealing with our child, putting him on that altar. Somebody got to help me with how you get a child that obedient to lay on the altar. Hello?
Yes, sir.
I didn't mean to disrupt you on this last day, Christmas Eve. Not Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve. Amen. New Year's Eve, amen. But I need for us to be able to have some thoughts when we go into the new year. And for Abraham to have the faith that he had in this passage, and not only for Abraham to have the faith that he has, but Isaac had to have some faith here too.
All right.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say this morning? Because listen to what he said. And Abraham built an altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son.
Yes, sir.
Somebody ought to have some faith in there. Hello? Somebody ought to be, amen, ought to look at this thing and say, well, you know, somebody help me with this sermon this morning. Abraham was obedient to God and God's word. It appears that even though Isaac did not know what was going to happen, he became obedient to his earthly father, who was obedient to his heavenly father, to the point of dying. As soon as I get unconfused, I'll be through. Have you ever been to the circus or to the fair or any of these places that they put on amusement for entertainment purposes?
Yes, sir.
And I started to do this, but then y'all would have voted me out as pastor. I wanted to bring a big target in here. And, see this? I want to bring a big target in here. and put it out front. And you know the guy on TV that throws the knives and sticks it in the target?
Yeah.
I started to bring that. And then I would have needed to say, the Lord want me to ask one of you to be. Somebody said, God will provide. And so usually the man is the one throwing the knife. And usually he has a very beautiful woman standing up there in front of the target, with her arms stretched out, and he's throwing knives, top, 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 and he outlines her whole body in knives. I think I have to practice to get that right. I'm glad he gets it perfect on those times. But then they will actually sometimes put them on a wheel and then... Somebody tell me how they do it. But have you ever seen a woman get mad or start fighting and somebody had to drag her up there and tie her to her? She walks up, just as happy as she can be. What makes her have that kind of attitude? To be willing to stand there and let somebody throw knives. Oh, sometimes he put blindfolds on. Don't y'all try this. I started to try it this morning, but I can't. Y'all won't hold me out. But what makes, what gives her the confidence to be able to stand there and let him do that? What gives him the confidence to feel that he can do it and not harm that person? I didn't hear that comment, bro. But I've got a feeling that they've had some experience in this. I've got a feeling that there has been some practicing that is going on in this scenario. I've got a feeling that as long as she stays in her spot, don't move, don't sneeze, don't do nothing while I'm doing this, amen, everything ought to go right. I've seen him throw it enough that I've seen how accurate he is when he throws that knife. We have worked together enough that we know what the other one is getting ready to do before they even do it. I'm confident enough that I can put a blindfold on, or he can put a blindfold. Why? Because we've been through this stuff so much that we know what the other person is getting ready to do. And we don't have to stroke out. We don't have to pass out. We don't have to get upset and alarm every time a knife is thrown. Why? Because we know what we're doing. It's amazing to me, then, that Abraham didn't have a long conversation arguing with God. It does not show me in the Bible where the son Isaac was upset or was confronted with his father, because, I'm assuming that Abraham was, you have to, somebody help me out with my math. Let me see. God came to Abraham and said, Abraham, I'm going to give you that boy that you've been asking for. I think Abraham was 75 when that happened. That's what he told him. It was 25 years after that before he had the child. Because the Bible said he was 100. All right? And now he's a grown man or young man. So that's a little time gone by. So now you tell me how a 120-year-old man gonna wrestle down a young man and put him on the altar. Okay, and now you're gonna pull a knife out to harm him. Something lets me know that there was some submissiveness on all the parts. Something is there that lets me know that they've been here before. There's something here that, if nothing else, that they're hearing the voice of of God when God said, Abraham, I want you to come outside your tent. And before Abraham even had a child, God said, I want you to look up in the sky and count the stars. And he said, if you can name the stars and if you can count the stars in the sky, then you'll be able to count your children, your descendants. But Abraham couldn't count it. So God said, so be it unto your children and your children's children. You're going to be blessed just that way. Abraham, pick your stuff up and leave your family. I'll tell you where you need to go when it's time for me to tell you where to go. Abraham has been here before and listened to the voice of God in the past. Even when things didn't make sense, God made a way out of no way for him. I'm simply here this morning to tell you sometimes it may not make sense to you. Sometimes it may not add up to you. But I want you to look back over your life and see how good God has been to you. You may have gone through some stuff. You may be going through some stuff right now, but look how God brought you out of so much stuff. And now that you're at the end of 2017 and you're looking over into 2018 and you don't know which way things are going to go, I'm here to tell you however they go, God will provide. Jehovah Jireh, whatever you need him to be, guess what? God says, I'll be that very thing in your life.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There's a song that says, he keep on proving himself. He keeps on over and over and over again. And if you stay with him long enough, if you trust him long enough, that even when things happen to you that puts you in an unusual or awkward position, you don't become alarmed. You don't become frightened. You can become like the little lady standing in front of the thing, just be smiling. Folks said, what you smiling for? Said, God still provided. What you happy for? You just lost your job. Guess what? God still provided. What are you smiling for? You just lost a lover. Guess what? God still provided.
Yes, sir.
He's still taking care. He's still in the blessing business. So that leads me to believe that simple fact, that simple point, that Abraham had been with God so much that he could trust God with any circumstance. That leads me to believe that Isaac had been around his daddy so long that he was able to trust that his daddy would fix to do something that wasn't in God's hand. So God has already ordained. God has already promised you something. When I was a young minister, I got on a plane going to California. And I wasn't accustomed to flying either. But the person on the plane next to me got alarmed. You know, when them planes take off, make you a little nervous. When they hit on brakes, when they land, you a little nervous. Now, when they're flying, they're okay. But they became panicky. I reached over and said, it's going to be all right. They said, well, how you know it's going to be all right? I didn't want to say this, but I don't know about you, but I know about me. God has shown me some more stuff that's going to happen. They hadn't happened yet, so if nothing else, I may go another way, but I don't believe it's going to be today because God has already shown and promised me some things that's going to happen. And so when you believe that, when you start trusting God, not from my personal view, but in the ministry God has laid before you, then you can speak with confidence that God's not going to take my son. I don't know what he's going to do. But guess what? I do believe he's going to provide. And just as Abraham was getting ready to draw the knife back to slay his son, the voice from heaven came from angels and says, Abraham, steady your hand, slay not your child. And at the same time, when he hears that voice for God now, amen, acknowledges and confirms his belief that Abraham wouldn't withhold nothing from God. And when you you don't hold nothing back from God, then God doesn't hold anything back from you. He opens up the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing that you don't have room enough to receive. And just as he does this, he hears a rattling in the bushes. And when he looks around, there's a ram. Listen to what the Bible says. Whose horns are tangled in the bushes. Couldn't get away. Again, I don't know his exact age. Let's just say he's 125 years old. At 125 years old, he ain't got to do too much running now. God has it for him, is standing right there and can't get away. Amen. And God provided. And Abraham said, from this day forward, this place shall be called Jehovah Jireh. It is a place that God will provide. And I say unto you, plant that word in your spirit, in your heart. Just as he has provided, he will continue to provide. The door